Alan Kogosowski has earned the title Chopinist in acknowledgement of his dedication to and understanding of the music of the piano's greatest composer. In 1999, Alan Kogosowski was honoured by the Polish branch of the Order of the Knights of Malta with a special decoration in recognition of his many outstanding all-Chopin recitals in London. For 10 years, he hosted a distinguished series of musical evenings in London known as Schubertiades at Sotheby's with guest artists from all over the world. He has performed on many occasions for the British royal family, foremost admirers being the late Princess Diana and the Queen Mother. Allan Zavod studied music at Melbourne University before being discovered by Duke Ellington. Jazz great Duke Ellington heard Allan at the keyboard and arranged for him to train at the prestigious Berklee School of Music in Boston. Allan Zavod later became a professor and now Doctor of Music. Well known as a jazz pianist in the United States, where he lived for 20 years, he played with trumpeter Maynard Ferguson, the Glenn Miller Orchestra, guitarist George Benson, toured and recorded with Frank Zappa, and spent 8 years on world tours with Jean-Luc Ponty. He was voted one of the top 10 jazz pianists in the US in the 1980s by the American Music Bible, Downbeat magazine.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, Alan.
How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah,
Good
it's
to
going
see
well.
you. It's going very well.
Yeah.
Listen,
Getting all
I've been
ready?
practicing. I've been practicing it the way Gershwin used to do it, after the main theme, combining the piano with the orchestra, and I find that it works.
Well, let's hear it.
Watch this. Watch this.
Please.
And it goes on and on.
That's amazing. I have never heard anybody played it like that before.
Yeah, only
Extraordinary.
Gershwin.
Only Gershwin?
Yeah.
Well, it's impossible. I didn't think it was even possible to do it. But actually, as great as it is, I think maybe we should keep it straight because we're playing this week.
All right, maybe you're
So
right.
could we do that?
Maybe you're right. Should we
That's
start from
great.
the same place?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks. Slava, how are you? I'm Slava Grigoryan, Alan Kogosowski.
Hello, very nice to meet you.
Great to see you. What did you think of that?
Well, I've been playing Asturias since I was about 10 years old, and I've never seen it being played on the piano.
We used to learn these pieces by Albéniz all the time. When
Well,
we
as
were
you say, they were originally for
at the
piano
conservatorium.
and transcribed for guitar through Alan Segovia.
So many works by Albéniz and Granados are
I know they
so
were
well
both,
known on the
Amazing.
guitar nowadays.
They were both great pianists, but all of their music sounds so conceived for the guitar. You can't think of it any other way now.
Well, and I think in some way it was. And there's a great story about that particular piece. Francisco Tárrega, a great Spanish guitarist in the late 19th century, first transcribed it for guitar, and Albéniz himself heard Francisco playing this, and and he complimented him by saying that that's the way he heard the piece, you know, to begin with. So there's a very strong link with the guitar.
Extraordinary. So obviously, as you say, you've played it since. Why would you like this better than the? Do you like it better than the piano version, or the guitar?
Well, it's, you know, the guitar is essentially a Spanish instrument, and you know, this captures that essence so well, and the fact that you know, these composers thought about the guitar when they conceived these pieces. I think.
Do you suppose we could hear a little bit of that on guitar, because we've just heard the piano. It'd be lovely to hear that in comparison.
Well, it certainly has magic played that way.
Actually, I like it both ways. Yeah.
A good piece is a good piece.
Good piece. That's it. Exactly. I think we're on the same page there.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Tell me, why do you think that so many of those great Spanish composers, Albéniz, Granados, de Falla, didn't write for the guitar per se? They wrote for the standard classical combinations of orchestra, piano.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I think there are a few answers. I mean, the guitar, particularly in Spain, was always a folk instrument. I mean, flamenco is such a you know, a natural way of life there. Everyone plays guitar on the streets, and I guess you know, these composers who obviously were inspired by this tradition didn't want to you know, lower themselves in the, you know, the wider classical world's eyes. You know, the guitar, I think through history has always had that kind of...
They were almost ashamed of it then. It was
probably in a way.
It was the instrument of the people, of the
was,
working class.
Yeah, and yet there's a great history of you know, wonderful composers loving the guitar. I mean, Schubert was apparently travelled with a guitar and you know, came up with a lot of the concepts for his compositions.
And Paganini wrote some sonatas for guitar, which were only discovered very recently.
He was a wonderful guitarist as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a wonderful story about that.
Let's hear it.
Well, Paganini played duets with a guitarist called Luigi Legnani, and all of the works were incredibly virtuosic for the violin. But the guitar parts were very
right.
Very simple accompaniment parts. But Legnani was a fabulous guitarist, and after years of you know, pushing Paganini to write a piece where the guitar had a proper part, Paganini finally agreed, and you know, months later they find themselves in a concert hall about to premiere this new sonata where the guitar is the solo instrument, and just as they're walking onto the stage, Paganini grabs the guitar off Luigi and says, "You're playing violin tonight."
What about rock and roll?
That reminds me, I've got to tell, that reminds me of a story, a similar story. Arthur Rubinstein visited his friend Enesco, who was a great violinist as well as composer, in Paris once in the 1930s. And Enesco also gave lessons, and he was giving a lesson to a student of his who was going to give his violin debut recital that night. And he said to Rubinstein, "Arthur, come along and turn the pages for me." So he did. And the next morning, the review said, "There was a very strange concert last night. The man who was turning the pages should have been playing the piano. The man who was playing the piano should have been playing the violin." And the one who was playing the violin should have been turning the pages.
So the guitar has come up as a bit of a Johnny-come-lately in the 20th century. I mean, in 20th century music, as in rock and roll, for example. That's where it became into fore with Elvis Presley and Bill Haley, the electric guitar. You know, in the field of jazz, you know, I would suppose Rodriguez came into fore with Miles Davis when he did that. Rodriguez with the slow movement of the young way.
Sketches of Spain.
With Sketches of Spain with Gil Evans. Can you give us a couple of bars of that? And that's beautiful. That's fabulous. So everybody at home will know exactly what that one is that we're talking about, and would know from their Sketches of Spain. It's a recommended album for everyone to have. It's a classical jazz, beautiful fusion. And speaking of fusion, I was thinking, because you know we love that. He hates that word fusion. You know, the Asturias that you were playing before. I was just thinking in the that scale is rather like, it reminds me about the Chick Corea at La Fiesta. I always wonder if we could do a little jazz version of that Asturias together, just using the say the three chords of La Fiesta. They seem to come across. Would you want to try that?
Why not?
Slava, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
You know, we've so much appreciated you. Come on the last minute. Alex managed to grab you on the phone, and you just happened to be in the area, and we do appreciate you. It's lovely to hear you playing, joining us, the two Allans, for our first.
Lovely to meet you.